Everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid. Good morning. Well, for you, hopefully by the time this is actually released at the correct time. For me, it's 5 o'clock in the evening. And as you can see, we're already dark here in my part of the northern hemisphere. And it's been a busy week. And I have gotten a little behind on putting out my breakdowns, partially due to it taking a while to get the defensive breakdown or the defensive film to break down. Put on top of that, family, etc., illness. Yeah, we are here where we are. And hopefully I'm going to be able to sit down and finish that film tomorrow. But if I don't, I at least want to get something out. So I thought we'd do a little walk and talk. I'm actually out here walking over to a meeting to start our off-season program, which starts on Tuesday. So we're walking. Perfect opportunity to do some talking. Let's move the camera so it's not getting so much clearer. There we go. All right. So there's actually some things that we can talk about. And the good thing is I have a limited amount of time to do it. So hopefully that's going to prevent me from rambling on. By the time this has been posted, I believe it was yesterday for you, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel put out an article that was a survey of, I believe it was 13 Milwaukee area coaches, asking them about their relationship with Luke Fickell and the current coaching staff. They've done this before. Actually, when I started reading it, I had to make sure that I was actually reading a current thing and not something from last year, the year before. But it was basically asking the questions that you would want to ask. You know, how do you feel the staff is treating you? How do you feel that your relationship with the staff is? How do you feel about how they feel about your players, etc. And as predicted, and just like last time, there are a lot of negative comments. You know, for a survey that is anonymous, there's definitely one you could tell who it is. And if you are a Wisconsin high school football fan, especially for someone who knows about the Milwaukee area, you know what school I'm talking about and what coaches. Anyways, they are critical where they feel that the staff is not prioritizing the state of Wisconsin. They are upset that the coaching staff only offers their players after another school has offered them, amongst various complaints. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do with this is I am not here to defend Luke Fickell and his recruiting practices. It's too late into the Luke Fickell era to even think about doing something like that. Whether he's right or wrong in the eyes of these coaches, he's wrong. And we'll leave it at that. Not going to try to change anybody's opinion on that. But not hidden, but in the background, in plain sight, in this article, are, first, some positive comments about various members of Coach Fickell's staff, as you would expect to hear. The coaches who are in charge of recruiting Wisconsin, some of them have some very good relationships with the coaches in this era, Devin Spalding and AJ Blazik, to name a couple. But there were some nuggets thrown in there that, to me, really show why recruiting in the state of Wisconsin has slowed down. Recruiting is not the same as it was even a couple of years ago with Paul Chryst, and definitely going all the way back to Barry Alvarez. And a couple things with that. So, number one, if I am looking at this from the outside as someone who is not recruiting the state of Wisconsin, I'm just looking at the data, I'm just looking at the film. 2026 class for the state of Wisconsin is not good. If you look at Gavin Meyer, the number one player in the state, currently committed to Minnesota. He is a 3-star, mid 3-star. if you put him in Wisconsin's current class, he would be somewhere in the 6-7 range. I'm not don't have the numbers right here in front of me, obviously, but he would not be one of the top recruits. The one kid that we have from Wisconsin currently still on the recruiting class is the lowest rated player in Wisconsin's current recruiting class. He is 8th. He is the 8th best player in the state, and he is the lowest rated player on Wisconsin's recruiting class. The guy right above him, the number 7 player, and I encourage you to go look at this, is currently committed to Kent State. And it is showing, if you look at this class, kind of like how Wisconsin has been over the years, where the coaching staff here would, a lot of times, they would have relationships with kids going back a ways, and a lot of these kids would commit to MAC schools, to the Dakota schools, stuff like that. Alec Ingold is an example, committed to Northern Illinois. And then we go and we flip the MAC kids. We flip the FCS kids. We flip FCS kids, give them walk-ons, etc. And I apologize, I'm walking over a highway right now. And I think that was more doable back in the day because those players could have, a lot of them, could have multiple years on the roster to develop into something. They could also build a roster with development players because, as has been said ad nauseum at this point, all right, sorry, I had to get past the highway. It's been said ad nauseum at this point, but the path to victory and the path to the Big Ten championship game for the Badgers back in the day, up until a couple of years ago, went through the type of schools that recruited these type of players. Your lower level Big Ten teams, MAC schools MAC schools and smaller that we would play in the non-conference schedule. And because Wisconsin had better coaches that could develop, and they took the time to develop, they could take mid players and turn them into something. They could take the same players that Minnesota and Purdue and Northwestern would get and make them better. Fair enough. And that was, something that we should, as Wisconsin fans, hang our hat on. But now, those same kids, one, you don't have time to develop kids for 3, 4, 5 years. Because, one, these kids have options now. So, I think kids are realizing that, especially with NIL, that, hey, maybe I should go to a MAC school where I can play now, get some tape, and then transfer to Wisconsin later, transfer to a bigger school later. It's a smarter business decision. And right now, I think, and you're seeing it this year, Wisconsin's priority with high school kids, for the most part, seems to be they're looking for kids who can contribute early. And you can just see how many true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, have played over the last 3 seasons to show that either one, they were ready, or two, they were just a massive talent upgrade to players who were already here. Also, another thing that was mentioned in the article is that the Badgers are losing the top players to big programs outside of the state. Okay? Guys going to Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, going out west, going to UCLA, whatever. And this was a sign that we couldn't keep the top level talent in Wisconsin. It sounds like the same kind of kids that we would lose to Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State in years past. I mean, some of the best high school offensive linemen in the state of Wisconsin in the last couple of years who are in the NFL now went to Michigan. So it's not like that has changed, but also how we as football fans and how kids growing up in the state of Wisconsin consume football. You know, back when I was in school, back in the dinosaur days, back in the 90s and graduating in 2000, you know, we'd watch the Badgers because that was what was on TV. And we didn't have the Big Ten Network. And, you know, the local broadcast, that's what we got. So we grew up as Wisconsin fans. That's why people grew up as Packer fans, grew up as fans of whatever. It's also why fans in certain areas grow up as fans of the opposite team, because the local networks knew to play the opposite team as well, the rival. Now, and so I grew up on a steady diet of watching Wisconsin play bad Minnesota teams and bad Illinois teams and Northwestern and all these mid-level Big Ten teams, which we still lose to often enough to make it not habit. But anyways, we'd be forced to watch those games that they were the majority of the schedule. And then the Big Ten Network came around. And the games against the Marylands and the Rutgers and the Purdues and the bad Illinois teams and the bad Minnesota teams, they get relegated to the Big Ten Network. Not everybody has the Big Ten Network. And what Badger games did they end up seeing? Well, the national games. The games against Michigan and Penn State, Michigan State, etc. Ohio State. And what has happened more often than not since then? They've lost to those big programs on national television. So kids, they may say they're growing up Wisconsin fans, but they're not growing up watching good Wisconsin football all of the time like we did back in the day. Growing fat and happy on watching blowouts of mid-level MAC-type teams, even if they were in the Big Ten. So, the perception of the football program in the state is different. So, when big-name programs come calling to kids who have grown up watching those big-name programs beat Wisconsin on national television, somehow it's surprising to people that they choose to go to those schools, especially those schools who have better resources, better facilities, and can offer kids who want to play football more than Wisconsin, who the biggest thing that people talk about with the University of Wisconsin is the university in the city of Madison. When you got kids who are going to school to play football, they care about the locker room. They care about the football facilities, the weight room, etc. So the perception of the program is very different. So to me, it is not surprising that big-name players go out of state. That being said, should there be more of a priority to get these kids in? Sure, if there's roster room for them and if they fit what we need to do. I think the coaching staff needs to do a better job at relaying the message to these coaches to let them know what their aims are in recruiting, why they wait sometimes to make offers, and why they don't offer everybody, and why you can see big changes in relationship based on what they need and what they're looking for. But whether it's Coach Fickell or the next coach coming in, doesn't matter. These coaches should be recruiting to win the Big Ten, which is what we did before, right? But we're recruiting to win the Big Ten that consists of USC and UCLA and Oregon and Washington and Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan and now Indiana. big name programs. We're not building a program to beat 3 and 6 Big Ten teams. We are not building a program to beat 4 and 5 Big Ten teams. We're not building a program to win the Big Ten West anymore. That's just how it is. So, some people don't want to hear it because the truth can be harsh, but I think the writing's on the wall. I think that's what's there. And that point has been belabored over the last 3 years. So, Luke Fickell's personality is rubbing people the wrong way. And I think there's people amongst of the coaches that they talk to, Luke Fickell was never going to win anyways. But the fact that you saw coaches in that same article talk about the positive relationship with Fickell and the staff, I think it's as much personal as it is professional and football-wise. So that's what we're thinking about in terms of recruiting and the state of Wisconsin. All right, I am to the office right now. I'm going to pause you for a second. We're going to go upstairs, and we're going to finish the rest of this. All right, here we are, back in the meeting room. Just got to move some things around, get out of the way so I have space to do the rest of this. Our trophy from a couple weeks ago. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about, because I want to wrap this up, because my meeting is starting here in about 30 minutes, is the youth movement going forward for the next couple weeks, for the last month of the season, and where do I see this going with the players who are on the roster and who are going to be a part of that movement going forward. So, the Oregon game, like I said in the breakdown, there were some good things, both offensively and defensively, and hopefully you're actually going to see me break down the defense where I talk about some of those good things. And a lot of those good things are about the youth on the team. To me, that's showing that, one, there is good talent evaluation, that their kids can step in and play right away, and more importantly, that these kids, when given the opportunity, are taking it and are showing that they are capable, both physically and mentally. You really see it with the linebackers, with Catalano and Posa, how much that they just fit right in, where they have the natural talent, but you can see that they have that leadership role that you expect to have from inside linebackers, and setting us up for a good future that just shows some talent evaluation there, and also keeping good Wisconsin kids who are Big Ten, national caliber Big Ten players in-house. Offensively, we've seen it with the linemen. There's a big learning curve with the line, and the physicality is getting there, and I think they're settling in. I think Mandel is settling in. He's not perfect. Again, I think his future, they expected him to play guard, but he's settling in at right tackle. Cubberly is playing well at right guard, all things being considered. And as we saw this last week, Atuka and also Eugene Hilton Jr. getting some quality reps, making some big plays. Grant Steck has been getting a lot of tight end 2 reps and is a solid blocker. Made a couple of good catches. There's been some good youth things. This week against Washington, I think we're going to see the next major step in that progression, and I think it's going to happen at the quarterback position. I commented when the depth chart was put out this week, where Hunter Simmons is yet again listed as the starter, that I think he's got somebody's labradoodle chained in his crawl space, because there's certainly nothing on the football field that has warranted him to continue to start, because he is not getting better. He shows what he is. And maybe back in the day when we were having to play MAC schools and MAC wannabe Big Ten teams, he could have been fine. Hell, he would have fit in perfectly back in the day here, but now he's not. I have been pontificating to anybody who can hear it, why isn't Danny O'Neal playing? He certainly didn't do enough that it's still warranted that he's being benched for anything on the football field, because I think he brings more to the team than Hunter Simmons. But I have a feeling now that we are in the last 4 games of the season where red shirts are secured going into the offseason, that we are going to see Carter Smith. I think there's a good chance we could see Danny O'Neil as well. And we are going to see packages of these quarterbacks. Carter Smith is the type of player who is going to make those run reads that Hunter Simmons refuses to make. My old ass can run through some of those holes created when the entire defense is following a running back. Carter Smith will keep the ball in those situations. He needs to. We need somebody who's willing to. He's going to get his welcome to Big Ten moment doing that for sure. And all it takes is a player like that or Danny O'Neil to keep the ball in a key spot that is going to force the defenses to play honest and be honest. You can see it with our defense. Our defense respects. We saw it against Oregon. They respected more. It's been that way the whole season. You have to respect mobile quarterbacks, and you have to respect an offense that takes that into effect. So that's why you see linebackers waiting for RPOs. That's why you see defensive ends like Reiger, if he does it correctly, he's squeezing, but he's not chasing. That's why when you see Daryl Peterson just chase, it causes problems, right? And offenses, are able to game plan around that. We need a quarterback who's willing to do that. And if Danny O'Neil is not going to play, it's got to be Carter Smith. Carter Smith has the measurables in terms of speed and agility that this program just hasn't had, and that modern football is going towards. So I hope that Coach Grimes either dips back into his bag of tricks or brings back the offense that we had hoped he would bring, because we certainly haven't seen it in the last few weeks. The offense has been so vanilla, and I would rather have an offense that resembles Air Force more than a offense that resembles us playing against Ohio State back in the day when we would just pound into a wall, nothing would happen, we wouldn't be able to throw. I don't like watching that type of football anymore. I never did. We need to stop. And I would rather have a dynamic quarterback who can bring balance to the offense, because balance doesn't necessarily always have to be about throwing. It is about making the defense respect the entire field. You can do that through passing, but you can also do that through running. And then you can build from there. It's what Lamar Jackson, he's one of the most gifted runners in the world, and he's really grown as a passer because defenses have to focus so much on his running ability that it's given him time to develop his passing game. And I think Carter Smith can have that kind of trajectory. Not as fast, but you know what I mean. He can bring a different dynamic to the offense that we haven't had since they benched Danny O'Neil. And something needs to change, or the vote of confidence that we got a couple weeks ago is going to mean nothing, and someone's going to have to come in and drop the nuclear bomb on the program and start completely over. Maybe that's a good thing. Who knows? But you're going to see it happen anyways this offseason. There is going to be a major, major upheaval if McIntosh and the donors are putting their money where their mouth is and give Wisconsin the money that they need to upgrade the program and to bring in the players that are necessary to compete, to fill in the gaps, to fill it, to cut the dead weight, and make the program where it should be in relations to the teams they're playing against now. We were that when we were playing against teams like Purdue and bad Nebraska, et cetera. You know those teams I was just talking about. No, I don't care about those teams. We're going to beat those teams anyways. Now we have to have that same level of play against more of the big boys, because we're going to play against them more every year than we did back in the past, where we play them 3 times in the season and go 1-2. It's things are changing. So Wisconsin has the opportunity to make a Virginia-like reversal of fortune if the coaching staff realizes their part in the error, they fix that, they fix the roster, they build towards the future and build for now. We need both. So that's where we stand. And I think with that, I think we're going to call it here. Thank you for watching. Hopefully by tomorrow, I will have the defensive breakdown for Oregon up for you to see. Be on YouTube and Substack. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you then.